All right, so I'm going to keep it short so that we can get to our coffee break. Just quick background about me. I'm founder and CEO of Hiradius. Just to give you some context, we are a US headquartered company. I was hearing about what Tiger said at Hiradius. We say we are a global company and global culture. 18 years in business. We started in order to cash and then expanded to multiple office of the CFO functions. What I'm here to talk about here is the future of business services. I think I met with some of you over breakfast this morning. I kind of call it like experience sharing. Opinion sharing is easy. So we also believe in part of our unique culture, experience sharing. So some of this is, I think, obvious to you. If you look at the history of business services, I would say about 65% of our clients are shared services, GBS, out of the 1,100, so we interact with a lot of them. And we've been in business about 18 years. So historically, whether we like it or not, a lot of it is around labor cost arbitrage, SLAs on activity. But I've started to see some changes. I think the present to future would be less relevancy around labor cost and more SLAs on business outcomes. I think this has also been talked about it for a while, but we're starting to see this happening in the real world. So it's all going to be about value creation. This is pretty much how we are betting our business. We did a pivot about 2 years back. So let me double click on that. So my experience is coming from about, again, experience sharing, mostly large Fortune 1000 companies, Global 2000 companies across our clients. We do mostly finance automation, so it's really applicable to any industry vertical. So if I double click a bit more, my own background is actually an SAP ABAP developer. So I kind of have a love-hate relationship with SAP. And I evolved to being a functional consultant, finance. I think if I look back even at Hiradius, almost for the most part, except for the last 3 years, most IT projects were classic statement of work, product features driven. But I've started to see some shift. And I talk about this to our leadership team. Since 2022, I exactly don't know the reason. It was like kind of after COVID. But we do more and more projects which are business outcomes and value creation. Obviously, as a software company, we have to go where the market is going, and we have to get there earlier than others. So this year, we have done about, so far year to date, about 200 projects, and 80% of them are value-driven, which is you literally define when you kick off the project. We use something called as mutually agreed success criteria. So you define the business outcomes. If it is DSO is so much, what should it be? If you're working capital optimization goals, FTE goals, and so forth. So it's a very interesting shift that I'm seeing. And I think the way we think about it is this is the future. So measuring value creation every day. So I'm going to take an example of, I'm about one of our clients, Cummins. I'm an exec sponsor to about 20 of our clients. I work with their CFOs. So this is what we do all the time. So every month we meet for 30 minutes in a steering committee. We start by roadmap performance. And if you can see here, in this case, this is an order to cash implementation. For each process, from collections, cash, deductions, and others, we start with the bottom line conclusion. No watermelon effect. Is it red, yellow, or green? And then, in this case, the target percentage past due is 30%. We are still at 44%. Cash application, our goal is to have 65% automation. We're at 70%, so obviously that's green, and so forth. And then the business outcomes are kind of straightforward because it's easy to measure. It's a lagging indicator. What we very quickly double-click into is what we call as operational KPIs. This is something that has never been done before, I think, and it's harder to do as well. So then we say, okay, given the business outcomes of collections, percentage past due as an objective, what are the key contributors to that? The leading indicators or the inputs that drive the lagging indicators, which is the outputs. So here, we have an integrated in-app dialer, so it records every call and so forth, and it logs it automatically, so you don't need to depend on your collectors to do this. So we can clearly see that the calls per day per analyst is not where it needs to be. The personalized emails per day per analyst is close to where it needs to be, but not fully there. And then the machine part, what we do automated, is kind of yellow zone. So our percentage past due coverage, the goal is to cover 80% of your customers every 2 weeks, but we are still covering only 46% of your customers. So, and I'm going a bit into the detail by design, but thinking about your end goal, the outcomes you want to accomplish, but then you cannot just follow the outcomes because that's a lagging indicator. You don't know if it's going to take a year, 1.5 years. On a weekly basis, how can you look at your leading indicators, which are operational KPIs that are correlated? So then we immediately say, okay, what are the actions we can take? What can we do as a software company to improve? Or what can you do with your management team to improve? And that's pretty much it. It only takes 20 minutes, or max 30 minutes. So following the high radius rule with our clients as well. So again, so what does this mean from your perspective, right? I mean, I do think that the whole automation and the whole there is a lot of talk about AI. By design, I don't have any AI presentation because I think there is a lot of talk and fear-mongering and all that. But I do think that automation levels is slow. It's not going to be like overnight, there is no magic bullet. If I look at all of our clients and what we do for them, we are roughly reaching that 1/3% of work being done by machines. And we are talking about in the last 10 years evolution. I do think that with the more newer technologies and also the evolution that we are going through, this can get to 70, 80%, but that in 6 years, not Monday morning, right? It's a gradual shift. I always say like disruption happens slowly and then suddenly. So if that is the case, let's assume, then clearly the labor cost arbitrage fades, right? If a finance and accounting process is 60, 70, 80% automated, then the way you might want to think about your business, GBS is different. You need to focus more on value creation and outcomes because the labor cost arbitrage play might become table stakes. I'm already seeing that even with some of our own clients. We have a client in Dallas. They actually moved their operations back from actually India, back into Plano, Texas, because of the automation. That was kind of a less of a factor, and it was more around business outcomes. I know another client in New York. They've also done the same thing. They made a much more massive shift. They moved everything. I know it's a bit of a controversial statement from all the locations to actually not even near shore, right? It's actually back in the country. So these are some of the things that could happen. And as a GBS leader, you need to think about where is the game going and how do you be there ahead of it. And then one of the comments I want to make, my only AI slide is don't get catfished by the AI buzz, right? So there is a lot of talk about that. Instead of doing that, translate that to value creation. So AI is great, could be Gen AI, could be machine learning. First of all, it's pretty geeky. It's hard to understand. Might as well say, okay, it could be high radius, it could be ServiceNow, or it could be SAP. SAP says business AI. Maybe like translate to that's great, but how can you improve my operational KPIs or business outcome KPIs is how we think about it. So this is a cheat sheet. Feel free to take a screenshot if you want or ask for the deck and we can share with you. So when we looked at all the processes, the business outcomes are actually straightforward. You can talk to like 3 GBS leaders and very quickly you can establish because it's something that you think about. The most difficult part is the operational KPIs, identifying them and measuring them. So this is an example of what we landed at. I'm going to talk about order to cash, but the same thing applies like ultimately it is the humans plus machines. Can the machines do work that humans should not be doing because you're in a new age that when you make a coffee, you want to push a button and not make coffee the way you made it like 15 years back. That probably took 10 minutes. Similarly, I think there are aspects of finance and accounting you want machines to do, but then you also want humans to be more effective, right? We are all more effective using technology. So how do you measure them and how do you correlate them to the outcome? So last slide is, I know this is if you find this topic to be interesting, we have a network called GBS Masterminds. We also partner with ABSL, where we actually connect. We have about 200 GBS leaders, and we connect GBS leaders to the other GBS leaders through 2 channels. One is podcast. We have about 50 episodes already on GBS Masterminds, which is on the High Radius website. We also do live events and a very unique method called experience sharing. No opinion sharing, no advising. You can only do experience sharing. I learned this again from, I'm part of a CEO network, and we meet once a month, and you have to be very vulnerable and share challenges. So you're welcome to be part of GBS Masterminds. Thank you.